I've got one that can see.
Logic Before Authority. Hi guys, this is Daniel Alexander Cannon here on Logic Before Authority. We're going to do a little review and a little closer look at something. As you can see, the screen says Nuclear Trump, and then there's a quote by Trump. It says, "Vision is my best asset." Vision meaning seeing the future, okay? Knowing, well, I don't have to explain it too much. You understand what vision means. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Playboy interview with Donald Trump, and I've shown you this years ago, but we're going to take a look again because it's kind of timely, and you'll find out what I mean here in just a moment. But this is an interview that Donald Trump gave with Playboy back in 1990, I believe was the year. Let's see here. Yeah, 1990. Playboy sat down with a young, Donald Trump in 1990, where he teased the future in politics. Okay, this is from everything you're gonna see here, unless I tell you otherwise, it's gonna be directly from the interview, which you can still pull up online right now. Okay, and you're gonna find out why here in a minute why I say this is. I named it Nuclear Trump. Okay, not to mention that his uncle was nicknamed Nuclear Trump. But what am I talking about here? Am I just talking about out my rear end or what? Well, let's take a look at a few things, and you be the judge. You be the judge. Okay. This is some of the beginning of the article going into describing it. But I wanted to show this piece of it because it says where he says, quote, "Vision is my best asset." Okay. And of course he follows it up with, "I know what sells and I know what people want." But that's not really what this interview is all about. Let's take a look at some of the pieces of the interview and see what you think. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to give you, obviously, my view of what we're reading here. "With so much poverty on the city streets, isn't it embarrassing for you to flaunt your wealth?" Trump says, "There has always been a display of wealth and will always be until the Depression comes." Now, this was in 1990. Until the Depression comes, which it always does. And he says, "And let me tell you, a display is a good thing," and you can read the rest if you want. But what I wanted to point out here is that he's referencing until. Now, this is one of the most powerful, most well-known, rich billionaires in the world. And I know some of you have different varying opinions on Trump. And some of you know what a lot of my opinion is. But let's keep going here. Then what does all this, the yacht, the bronze tower, the casinos, really mean to you? Props for a show. And what is the show? The show is Trump. Okay. So, again, another reference to a show, a vision, kind of like a television that is a show. A show is a alternate version of reality and is not the true reality. A show is something you're putting on when you're trying to pick up a new chick, or a show is something you're putting on when you're showing off. And a show is something that is just not necessarily reality. Okay, but let's keep going. These questions are going to get much more interesting pretty quick. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'll just read it. "For a man so concerned about our crumbling cities, some would say you've done little for crumbling Atlantic City besides pull $50 million a week out of the tourists' pockets. Trump said elected officials have that responsibility. I would hate to think that people blame me for the problems of the world, yet people come to me and say, why do you allow homelessness in the cities, as if I could control the situation? I am not somebody seeking office. Recently, now this was not in the Playboy interview. This is something he said recently, as in, well, you can see the date right there, July 26, 2022. Trump calls for moving homeless to tent cities, or otherwise camps, or they would all just leave. In his first D.C. speech, which I suppose was on like July 25th, 26th, something like that, Trump said the government should remove thousands of homeless Americans and put them in tents on large parcels of inexpensive land in the outer reaches of the cities. And he then, down lower below, he praised how China prosecutes chemical criminals and called for a return to stop and frisk policies in cities, meaning the cops can just come up to you and check your pockets and breach the Fourth Amendment. That is what this is saying. Stop and frisk, which is what he's calling for. And I'm just pointing this out because he's going to be running for president again, just like I told you he was going to do. Just like I told you they were going to put Biden in there for 4 years, or give or take 4 years. You never know what can happen, right? So I just wanted to show you his position on that, okay? Okay. Let's see here. Here's another piece of that same article, not in the Playboy article. Part of what I was reading just above it. They're asking him about, leadership and stuff, and he says, you mean having a firm hand? Because he's talking about people, a leader needs to have a firm hand. It says, you mean a firm hand as in China? And Trump said, when the students poured into, I can't remember how to pronounce this, Tiananmen Square. You know what I'm talking about. Said the Chinese government almost blew it. Then they were vicious. They were horrible. But they put it down with strength. That shows you the power of strength. Our country is perceived weak, as being spit on by the rest of the world. So again, just pointing out that he admires the kind of strength that China does on their people. Seen him. PC's acting up just a little bit. Hopefully everything's still working. Okay, so now we're going back to the article in Playboy, and they're asking him if he thought George Bush is soft. He said, I like George Bush very much and support him, meaning he gives him money and promotes him, like right here. Now, most of you know who George Bush really is, like Skull and Bones, secret societies, that kind of thing. But some of you don't understand that Donald Trump is in the same clubs, and he shows it by his the way he holds his hands, the tip of the spear thing he does, that Angela Merkel does overseas all the time. And you'll see even YouTubers doing the tip of the spear. I would say, if you're watching anybody much at all, taking them serious, you better wash their hands. Okay, so anyways, I just wanted to point out that he's a big fan of Bush. Now, Bush was in charge of the United States, right? During the event that happened in September back in 2001. And he likes Bush. Yep. What would be some of President Trump's longer-term views of the future? Okay, if he was to become president, they were talking about, what would be some of President Trump's, this was in 1990, longer-term views of the future? This is his response. I think of the future, but I refuse to paint it. Anything can happen, but I often think of nuclear war. Now, why is a real estate developer often thinking of nuclear war? Often thinks of, this is so important that he mentions it. Now, where is he at when he's writing this article? When he's being quoted here, he's sitting in his tip of the spear Trump Tower. That's an upside down spear, among other things, and he's talking about thinking of nuclear war. The guy says nuclear war. He says, I've always thought about the issue of nuclear war. It is a very important element in my thought process. Now, this guy's a real estate developer who has no interest in being a president, according to him in this article. Yet, it is a very important element in his thought process. He says it's the ultimate catastrophe. The biggest problem this world has, and nobody's focusing on the nuts and bolts of it. It's like a sickness, kind of like a pandemic. People don't believe they're going to get sick until they do. Nobody wants to talk about it. I believe the greatest of all stupidities is people's believing it will never happen. Now, this is right when he's first asked about if he were president. This is his first things out of his mouth. Is this? I often think of nuclear war while he's sitting in New York City. And y'all guys know the reason I'm bringing this up is because of, or re-bringing this up, because of the public service announcement that just went out in New York, along with numerous other things that people have found where they're hinting at nuclear bombs going off. These guys don't mention these things in here and or on television over and over repeatedly. And in, 100 movies they've destroyed New York City? Okay, he says, the interviewer says, does any of, well, I have to back up so you'll understand. If I read the back down towards the bottom here, the greatest stupidities is people believing it will never happen. Because everyone knows how destructive it will be and nobody uses weapons. What BS, right? Got to get a little bit of water, man. Throat's drying up already. But what ended up happening, it was, I skipped one little piece here. He was talking about, he called that fuzzy thinking, about people thinking that nuclear war will never happen, okay? And then the guy says, does any of that fuzzy thinking exist around Trump, around the Trump office? Meaning if he was, well, around his office where he worked as the developer in New York City, supposedly, right? Or at least allegedly. Says, and then Trump said, on a much lower level, I would never hire anybody who thinks that way because he has absolutely no common sense, meaning not believing a nuclear war could happen. He's living in a world of make-believe, meaning, well, it says, it's like thinking the Titanic can't sink. Now, many of us know about the truth of the Titanic and what happened there. It was a banker takeout, rival banker takeout, the ones that went going along with, the plan that they're doing right now. But he says he's living in a world of make-believe, kind of like in a show. And to me, basically this is saying, let me see if I can clear this up in my head. Hang on a second. I'll tell you what, let me just read it. Okay, too many countries have nuclear weapons. Nobody knows where they're all pointed, what button it takes. Now, what he's doing here, and this is the way they do it, is that he will tell some truth in here, and he will give you some hints as to what the future holds. Okay? He says there are too many countries that have nuclear weapons, and nobody knows where they're all pointed, what button it takes to launch them. The bomb Harry Truman dropped on Hiroshima was a toy next to today's. We have thousands of weapons pointed at us, and nobody even knows if they're going to go in the right direction. And what is he saying? He's giving you a hint as to how the plan is as to when this goes down. It will be made out, the way he's describing it here, it will be made out like it was somewhat of an accident or somewhat of a mistake or miscalculation, is what he's saying here. Now, remember my words. When this all goes down, by 2030, when this all goes down, remember my words that they're going to say it was a miscalculation, an accident, or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to continue reading. We have thousands of weapons pointed at us, and nobody even knows if they're going to go in the right direction. They've never really been tested. These jerks in charge don't know how to paint a wall. Well, he knows how to build one, don't he? And we're relying on them to shoot nuclear missiles to Moscow. Now, why is Moscow the target in here? Well, that was who our enemy was that day. That's the projected enemy in the show that you're watching. That is the enemy still today, isn't it? Russia, 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 right? So it's going to be an accident, some kind of mistake, a mistake launching some kind of a missile. Is that what he's saying here? Okay. You know, it's like thinking the Titanic can't sink. It's going to happen, he's saying here. I don't believe for a second that this is not intentional and is scripted and put in the Playboy magazine for historical reference. What happens if they don't go there? Meaning Moscow. What happens if they don't go there? What happens if our computer systems aren't working? Nobody knows if this equipment works. And I've seen numerous reports lately stating that the probability is they don't work. It's a total mess. Okay, you see the potential kind of setup here, and the fact that he's basically saying that a nuclear explosion will happen in the United States, just a matter of time, kind of thing. Of course, this is just a screenshot from the nuclear preparedness PSA that the New York City Emergency Management people put out. Don't ask me how or why. Just know that the big one is hit. New York City, of course. Do you see all these other cities around the country putting these things out? Why just New York? Here's another one where they were talking about go bags. A go bag has everything you need in case you need to leave home in a hurry. Now, they'll say that this is maybe because of a hurricane, maybe because of a whatever. They're telling you to take some snacks, some bottled water, and a copy of your driver's license and birth certificate and stuff like that. Yeah. And this has come out very recently as well in the last few weeks. And then here's another where they're talking about the tap water. They're talking about make sure you drink yourself into good health by making sure you're drinking tap water. This was released too in the last couple of weeks. I don't know. But I've been told that a chicken walks a certain way. It bobs its head a certain way. Or is that a duck? Maybe it's a duck. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and swims like a duck, it's probably a duck. Now, I don't want these things to come to fruition. But we didn't want what happened in 2001 to come to fruition. But is there evidence out there to say that if we would have been really looking, we could have seen it coming? Just like I warned you 5 years ago that a reset was coming. Yeah. Some of you remember that, don't you? I didn't do it in just one video, mention it in just one comment. I did entire videos on it, showing you over and over, didn't I? Yep, I did, because if you're paying attention, this is what I've done for the last 12 years, is dedicate my life to this. And so when you do that, and it's a lot, I have to thank y'all guys for helping me be able to do this. The first 5 years, I was pretty much homeless doing it. But this last 7 years or so, y'all guys have been supporting my work and helping me along the way. So thank you for that. But when you're doing this for 12 years, you start to understand that they show you ahead of time. They show you ahead of time the things that are going to happen in the coming future. They put it in movies, they put it in magazines, they put it in cartoons, they put it everywhere. Now, how do I know this? Because that's exactly what they did for 2001. And many of you have seen the videos that show all that evidence. I've done them. And you know that I'm speaking the truth. Right? So let's pray that this does not happen, because a lot of people would lose their lives. Some people like to think that they wouldn't actually do something like this because, it's so many people would die. But all they need is a scapegoat, like Russia, or a man living in a cave halfway around the world, for 2001. They pulled that one off, and ain't nobody done nothing about it to this day. Have they? Nope, have not. So, anyways, this is an additional heads up to the other people that are, in addition to the work some other people have been doing on this subject. And many of you will remember also the video I did called, I can't remember the exact name of the video at this moment, but it was about the thorny apple. And it was about the symbols that are on the ball, the New York City ball that drops every year at midnight, right? The symbols that were on there. You remember the pineapple being on there, the thorny apple? And the investigation that I took you through and showed you that? And that was just one of the videos where I went in depth looking at what they're showing us and letting us know that if you were in New York City, I'm not saying it's going to happen in the next 6 months, even the next year, but there's no way you could give me $1 million place to live in New York City, and I would not take it, and I would turn it down and stay somewhere else, because New York City, the clock is ticking. For you guys that are in New York City and in New Jersey and the surrounding area, I want you to know the truth. I want you to know what's coming. And that's why I'm telling you this. I'm not trying to scare you to death, but you probably are living in a potentially bad location. And it's highly likely more than just potentially bad location. These guys typically get their way when it comes to these events that they like pulling off. And then they're able just to cover them up because they control the media. And then they shut down voices like me. Like, I've had my channel terminated 4 times. My whole channel gone, all videos, everything, 4 times in the last 12 years. And every time I lost my channel, I lost where I was staying, and everything basically that I had. And I've went through that 4 times. And I'm still doing it, still taking the risk, still speaking out. And with that being said, please, if you can, support my work. If you want me to stay out here and keep doing this, I need your help. I can't do this by myself. I appreciate all of y'all that have donated in the past. And I'm not like somebody who's gaining so much money that they're getting rich. I'm like somebody that today's the 6th and I don't know how to pay my rent today when it was due by yesterday. And I'm in this situation because I am passionate about the truth. I'm passionate about the Word of God. I'm passionate about saving as many others as I can. Saving them in many ways, but especially saving their life and saving them from the lies that are out there. I'm not as young as I once was. I don't have quite as much energy. I can't do 5 videos a week anymore. Plus, the type of videos I do nowadays takes a lot more work. This one wasn't that much work, but it was something I thought I wanted to go back over with you. But let me just stop and just say, I need your help. I need some of that help today. And I thank you. And I'll keep going as long as I can. I did for 5 years when I was homeless, so I'm sure I ain't going to shut up if I go homeless again. But I'd prefer not to be homeless. So if y'all guys can continue with your Patreon support. And no, I don't always do a perfect job of following even the rules I set for myself. But I'm still doing the job. I love you guys. Father loves you too. And I'll talk to you again real soon.